All right, so yesterday we looked at slope-intercept form. We're going to take just a brief review of that today before you work on a little bit of review of that. So remember, slope-intercept form is that y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept, right, or where you cross the y-axis. So remember we talked about a couple of different things we could do. All right, if I wanted to write an equation in slope-intercept form, right, say they said, what's the equation if the slope is, let's just say 1/2, right, and my y-intercept is -2. Remember, I could just say, well, I have y equals, because that y is always there, plug in my slope, so 1/2, and the x is always there, and then I add my y-intercept. In this case, it's -2, so I can say -2. So that's one easy way to write the equation. The other way we talked about is, what if they gave me 2 points, right? What if they said I have a point through 2, 1, and an equation through, let's just say 3, 5, all right? What's the equation of that line? So the first thing I have to do is I have to remember I have that slope formula, right? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if I were to look at that, right, remember we talked about labeling this stuff as x1, y1, x2, y2, right? Because I first have to find my slope. So if I plug that in, right, I'm going to move this up a little bit. So if I plug in my x1, y1, and y2, x2, y2, and say m is equal to 5 minus 1, 5 minus 1 over 3 minus 2, right? So if I simplify that, you get 4 over 1. Remember, anything divided by 1 would just give me 4. So now I know I have this y equals 4x plus something, right? But I don't know what the y-intercept is. So I need to take my points and I need to plug those in and then solve for b, right? Remember, so if I know that 2, 1 is a point on this graph, so I can say, well, when y is 1, right, and x is 2, what does that make b? So I just solve this equation and say 1 is equal to 8 plus b, and then I solve for b, right? Minus 8, so I get -7 is equal to b. And so now when I write this, right, I know I have y equals 4x because I already found my slope. Now I can say I know my y-intercept, I have -7. So there's my full equation, right? Y equals 4x minus 7. So the other thing we talked about is graphing, right? So when I graph, remember I need to know 1, what does m equal? And 2, what does b equal? And then remember, I'm always going to start here, right? So if I look at the line y equals -2/3 x plus 1, I first want to identify what is my slope and what is my y-intercept. All right, so I'm just pulling those things from the equation. So if you look here, right, my slope is -2/3, my y-intercept is 1, and so I'm going to start at the y-axis at 1, right? And then I'm going to use that slope to think about rise over run. So that top number tells me my rise. So if it's negative, I'm going to go down 2 and then over 3, and I'm always going to go over to the right. So once I have those two, I can connect my dots and I have my line. Okay, so if I look at y equals 5/3 x minus 3, I'm going to do the same sort of thing and say, what is my slope? What is my y-intercept? Right, so my slope is 5/3, my y-intercept is -3. And so remember that anytime you have a minus attached to your y-intercept, that comes with it as a negative. So I'm going to start still on my y-axis. This time I'm going to start down at -3, right, and use that slope and rise over run, that kind of idea there. And say, well, if I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over 1, 2, 3, right, remember always over to the right, I get my second point, and I can connect those, and I have the graph of that line. So that should give you a pretty good start and review of what we did yesterday, so that assignment goes pretty well. Your notes from yesterday will really help you with it, so get started on that.